This is the Pacific Ocean, a few hundred miles northeast of Australia. Members of the Bougainville Revolutionary Army cram their boats with much-needed supplies of medicine and fuel and prepare to set off from the Solomon Islands for home. But first of all, there is a prayer for safe passage. Their prayers, I know, will be needed, because home for these BRA guerrillas is the little-known island of Bougainville, where they're fighting an even lesser-known war of independence with Papua New Guinea. For 7 years, Papua New Guinea has blockaded the island. Its gunboats and helicopters patrol these waters with shoot-to-kill orders, which means we have a 3-hour gauntlet to run. I'm here because this is a war for which Britain is also responsible. It was the huge mine that a British company dug on Bougainville which provoked the fighting, and it was Britain's casual redrawing of the border a century ago that turned it into war. Breaking down on that border as we enter Papua New Guinea sea space seems about the worst place to do so. I scan the horizon for gunboats, knowing we're carrying so much fuel that just a stray bullet will be enough to fry us. The horizon, however, stays serene. This is a route that's cost many lives, yet it's Bougainville's only channel to the outside world. It is also the only way in to the longest and bloodiest conflict in the Pacific since World War II. Just as we near the island, the horizon loses its serenity. We breathe with relief when it turns out to be another BRA boat. But at least I've had a tiny taste of what the Bougainvillians go through every day. This is the story of an unsung people who took on Papua New Guinea, Australia, and the biggest mining company in the world, who started by fighting helicopter gunships with bows and arrows, and have lost 1/10 of their population, and yet who managed to create what may be the world's first true eco-revolution. The next morning, we find ourselves in the hands of Bougainville Revolutionary Army Commander Ismail Toroama. Our main goal is to get to President Francis Ona, the elusive man who started the revolution. But for the moment, Ismail's capable hands will certainly do. I'm amazed to find him driving everywhere, as the fuel the BRA get into their boats can't go far. But that's a trick I won't find out till later. Ismail was a mechanic before the war. Now people call him the Bougainville Ninja.
Makes my arms feel good. So I could handle the M60. Miss I use him to plug on. So now so naglaham lo mi time me cut this like in serium stop lo right left hand ya. Nunap hold him to masgan. Tasol. Emi also 1 year tasol now since me kiss him this like incident. Iplas tanablo beach front. La miyo klo sutimol maniet. Na oli tromem tripla, M203, grenade. Only launching me, one plane missing me, number 2 missing me, number 3 missing me, number 4, one come, pass lo hand blow me. Hanya only nak chop him. I mean, no what use, I mean useless. That's all. Just because me play believe lo one him something, me play lo fight long him, and me help him me play. I don't want to go.
We're the first people ever to film Ishmael and his men, yet I don't get the feeling he really trusts us. His way of getting closer is a kind of baptism of fire, if gentler than those he gives both Papua New Guinea's soldiers and the men he's training on this patrol. What my sound man and I think might be a smoke bomb turns out to be tear gas. It's Ishmael's way of saying welcome, a short, sharp dose of Bougainvillean reality. After a good cough, cry and laugh together, he loosens up and radios for us to meet Francis Ona.
Yeah, Rocha, make him good lolo ta work. So Francis initiative in starting the war, and I just got up behind it. Every part of the island has got minerals in it, and Francis saw that these things would bring change and change about to spoil the environment and the future generation.
But before we leave, Ishmael gets second thoughts about us seeing Francis. A makeshift generator has blown up one of our camera batteries while it was charging.
Last night when I slept, God told me that tomorrow there will be something happen. And all of a sudden the battery blew up. I made up my mind to tell you that you will not go to Francis Ona. Otherwise you face some problems there because your battery blew up.
It's another glimpse of the strange grip that God and superstition hold over Bougainville. Since the boat trip in, I'm no longer inclined to laugh at superstition, but I explain that if TV crews read all the things that go wrong as bad omens, then the medium would cease to exist. Reluctantly, Ishmael concedes to our heathen ignorance. He gives us the 2 days of torturous uphill clambering that will take us to Francis Ona and the heart of the war. When I'm not gasping for air, I get an idea of why the Bougainvillians have such fierce reverence for the place they call Mekamui, or Sacred Island, and why they could no longer sit by and watch its minerals being plundered.
We have seen our valleys, we have seen our forest, we have seen our rivers, beautiful trees, beautiful forest, literally thrown into dust, and we will not allow that to happen.
En route to Francis, we come across his vice president, Joseph Kabui, who puts the history of the place into perspective for us. Ever since the French explorer Louis de Bougainville put his name on the map in 1768, the island has gone through an endless game of colonial pass-the-parcel. Geographically, ethnically and culturally, it was always part of the Solomon Islands, but 100 years ago, the imperial powers decided to change all that.
The situation that we are in is not only unique for Bougainville. I mean, there are many African countries that the superpowers, merely just carve them out. Put a line right through and say, okay, this part belongs to you, this part belongs to me. A deal was struck between Germany and Britain. Germany saying, okay, I'll give Western Samoa to you, Britain, and Britain said, okay, I'll give Bougainville to you.
Germany didn't keep Bougainville long, though, as Australia grabbed it during the First World War. During the Second, Japan snatched the island for a few years before Australia grabbed it back. And in the meantime, it had ended up as part of Papua New Guinea, which got independence in 1975. Bougainville declared independence 2 weeks earlier, not that anyone listened, and it took another 13 years for war to break out. At last we find the man who can really explain why things suddenly changed. Francis Ona is portrayed by many as a humorless hardline revolutionary, I suspect they never really met him, because it certainly isn't the impression I get. So this is Papua New Guinea's public enemy #1.
All right.
When he's not running either the war or the self-declared Republic of Bougainville, Francis goes gardening.
My fighting on Bougainville based on these factors. One, that is, we are fighting for man and his culture. And two, land and environment. And the third one is independent.
Francis used to work for a mining company called Bougainville Copper Limited. It was a company he would later destroy. The reason, as it's always been on Bougainville, was the land and the bounty it holds.
This is a Panguna mine. It's development that has been taken, place starting back in 1960s. My people here were very ignorant, and they didn't know that in the future there would be a very big mine here, which is very destructive.
Before reaching the final layers of overburden, they cleared 550 acres of jungle and sluiced away the unconsolidated volcanic rock and ash.
Bougainville Copper Limited, or BCL, is mainly owned by an Australian subsidiary of the world's mining giant, Britain's Rio Tinto Zinc. In 1967, the company was given the go-ahead to excavate what was then the world's biggest open-cast copper mine, 500 metres deep and covering about 7 square kilometres, or the size of London's West End, where Rio Tinto's headquarters are based. It turned out to be a disastrous mistake, especially as they dug the hole right beneath Francis's village. In Bougainville, you don't come between the people and their land.
We Bougainvillians, we rely on our land. Land is our lifeline, land is our mother, and it's our protection. This place was a very big jungle with, which is a hunting ground for the people of this area. We had big trees, Also, there was a very big hill here. Right in the middle here, there was a very big hill, much higher than the top of those mountains up there. And now it's all disappeared. So now this land, which belongs to people, my people, is now become abandoned land. And I don't know how we're going to use this land back again.
When the locals protested about the huge hole the multinational wanted to dig at the fertile heart of their island, their land was taken by force. Of the $3 billion the mine made in profit, only 1,000th was given back to the people who owned the land. Rio Tinto Zinc had started to create their most expensive enemy. In the meantime, the inhabitants were shunted off into makeshift resettlements on desolate ground.
That's the Dapera village, and you can see that's the standard of building they built here for people. It's really like a shanty town. BCL was not been too much genuine to how we can resettle the people. This school was built by people themselves. Even the company and the government, they did not give any support. Just imagine, right in the middle of the giant copper mine, multi-million, worth, and here we are, people building their own schools, out of their own pockets.
But the thing that really stuck in the craw of the Bougainvillians was the pollution spilling over their land. Waste from the mine to the tune of about 1 billion tons ended up flowing down the Jaba River, contaminating it with copper, mercury, lead and arsenic. It killed off the wildlife and turned whole forests into moonscape. The land still bears the garish scars.
This is where all the pollution have been drained from the Panguna mine. You cannot drink water now down there. There are no fish, virtually nothing. And this will be maybe for next 200 years. This whole river system has been destroyed, and even you can't swim into this river.
Things hit boiling point in late 1988 when the Young Landowners Association, led by Francis, demanded both the closure of the mine and $10 billion in damages. The story goes that the BCL management laughed at them, $10 billion being far more than the mine was worth. Francis did not like being laughed at. He left the meeting in a hurry, broke into the local mining depot, and stole 50 kilos of high explosives. He and his friends had decided to close down the mine themselves, with some well-targeted sabotage. Panicked about losing what was nearly half of its export earnings, Papua New Guinea sent in the riot police. They burnt down homes, beat people up, killed a few, and generally created enough backlash to provide Francis's fledgling guerrilla force with all the recruits it needed. Ragtag bunch though the Bougainville Revolutionary Army were, their very name showed they were now raising the stakes. They didn't just want the mine closed down, they wanted independence too. It was all getting a bit much for the riot squad, so in came the army, the Papua New Guinea Defence Force. Rio Tinto Zinc abandoned the mine, and a David and Goliath war was on, with BRA stones and slings versus PNG helicopters. It was then that Francis realised they weren't fighting just Papua New Guinea, but Australia as well. Australia's ex-colonial interests meant it was already training and arming the PNGDF. Now it also suspended a Foreign Crimes Act, allowing its pilots to fly the helicopters it suddenly supplied. Helicopters that were quickly turned into gunships and trained mainly on an unarmed population. Faced with such brutal and powerful weaponry, the Bougainvilleans are forced into the first of a long list of innovations.
This is the first homemade equipment that we made to start a fight, start a war. We got a sling here, and you get this sling hooked on here, put a arrow in there that goes in through that pipe, you know, and when you prick at this up, it goes up and arrow applies. We make our own guns using all the material all around the place, been left by also in the Panguna. Pick them up and then used to build, cut down all the machines, cut down all the pieces and join them together. Like this one, all this has been made here, and we double them, made in Mekamui, and it's got a serial number. So if part of the equipment is been destroyed in the field, they can come back and then build their own guns. And this is how we build confidence in the force. So just imagine, with one cylinder weapon, winning a SRR, and from that single SRR, we went on to winning now virtually about 200 to 300 very powerful weapons. This one is resting now, having a holiday or whatever. Resting for good, yeah.
I saw that PNGDF, they came just to kill the villages and the civilians. I went out to Panguna and I saw Francis, asked him where are the weapons, and he told me there is no weapon. We will only start with bows and arrows and stones and sticks. I did the training myself, the tactics, the tricks, they're mine, and we made and put everything into action, and we captured 2 high-powered rifles. The boys saw how I fought, and they thought that I was a good leader, so they started following me. So that's how I ended up in holding the position of the BRA.
There are no clear front lines in the jungle. Even though they've made it their own, Ishmael and his boys know the PNGDF may never be far away.
That's the place where I usually train my boys, and I usually use live bullets, and sometimes wounded some of the boys, soldiers, so that's how they got the experience.
How many have you wounded?
12 of them. Yeah.
Very badly?
Yeah, one was very badly injured, and the other 11 of them were just a scratch.
Around 15,000 Bougainvilleans have been killed during the war, out of a population only 10 times that. Yet most haven't been slaughtered by Papua New Guinea Defence Force munitions, like these ones mortared during a church service. The majority have died from the lack of essential supplies created by Papua New Guinea and Australia's most insidious weapon, the 7-year siege of the island. By early 1990, the PNGDF was losing control of most of Bougainville, so it decided to establish a sea blockade around the island, which it hoped would turn the population against the Bougainville Revolutionary Army. As a quick glance at history could have predicted, quite the opposite happened. With bodies piling up from the lack of food, shelter and medicine, the BRA and the people rose against the challenge of the blockade together. Forced to learn the hard way that necessity is the mother of invention, their solutions came from the land.
With the blockade being imposed by Papua New Guinea government, we found that every family must be self-sufficient for the foodstuff. That's why we have to make our own gardens. We got shifting cultivation type of gardening here, and we have integrated mainly every crop, every food crop that we can find.
William was a businessman. Now a refugee from PNG-held territory, he shows us the green fingers he's had to develop.
This whole area is full of gardens. How the people here survive because the soil is so rich. It doesn't matter if you're going to do the garden farming on one area, single area, we're still going to get fruit. Fruit is still going to go on garden. What garden we got? We got sweet potato, we got bananas, we got cassava,
and we got a lot of taros. We planted
sugar cane, and then we got pawpaws.
We got a lot of yams around here.
Onion,
corns and tomatoes,
peanut,
potatoes.
People, it's very hard for them to hungry. People in Bougainville alone, they survive. That's why we say we can't depend on other people. We got a blessing. Gardens from here is no end. And you got bush from the river up to another mountain. As you see, the whole green is all over. That's Bougainville.
Yet no plant on Bougainville comes close to the importance of the coconut. We know we've been fed and sheltered by it, but then Ishmael shows us what a perfectly packaged life support system it is, and how his people have learned to make use of every part of it.
What of coconut? Now we got a lot of iron, very strong now about. Skim longan, squeeze him, put him low fire. The time you hot, you got to squeeze him. Now suppose you got soa, you na put him low soa. Tap longan, skim longan, dry skim longan. Put him low fire, low cook. Lim cell blongan, isla. Suppose you got plant the mosquito because in the island non blai got mosquito. Because I use in isla lo rousing mosquito. Milk blongan lo hap. Cook yo lo milk him. Coconut milk by like cook him kumu. Coconut oil lo lam. Na this la emi new plaka in something where me play in line inside lo crisis. And because I use him coconut leaf lo basket. Because I use him lo basket. Me play got soap made of coconut oil and first grade oil. He got triple grade A, B, na C. Na to grade and me basa I walk him na bisa clean him all gun.
In a war for the environment, it helps to have the environment on your side.
That's for if you had a nose block, then we usually use it for clearing the nose so that you can smell anything on the road. Just like enemies come, you can just smell them.
When we found that we didn't have very effective equipment, we developed our own booby traps. And that is made from herbs where we laid on the track where the enemy is moving. And then when they go by it, they started to develop sickness. In one of the booby traps, your testicles, just swollen up, and your penis, just enlarged.
But it's for healing rather than hurting that the Bougainvilleans have developed the bush medicine of their ancestors. With the PNGDF driving much of the population into the jungle, thousands were dying in unsanitized childbirth and from preventable diseases like malaria, pneumonia and dysentery. Tetanus from a badly handled machete, for instance, could prove lethal before the islanders once again made the land their ally.
That's a piece of asbestos.
Is it from the mine?
Yes, from the power pylons.
We got all these herbs put into the just all of 5 of the copper, and then with steam blown into that area where it will going to dry up very soon.
Francis is always on call as local GP, and his presidential HQ doubles as a surgery.
We got herbs here, certain medicine, which locates the areas being damaged, and blood is not flowing well. If there is no sickness, it will just, slice through like this. But when it finds areas where it's not functioning well, it will stick, It sticks like a glue,
The claims of Francis and his fellow healers amaze me. Being able to cure malaria, leprosy, appendicitis and cancer without operating, developing a herbal contraceptive which doesn't harm women. Having seen what else these people can do, I can no longer just dismiss it, especially as so many patients back it up. And at least Francis isn't so sure about all the cures.
We have given a treatment to some person because he had AIDS disease and sent him home. But we didn't have proof, any medical reports by doctors. So that's why we think we have treated someone with AIDS.
So Francis invites anyone with AIDS to come to test the Bougainvillean cure.
Let's go gardening now.
Besides what they get from the land, the islanders have found uses for absolutely anything that Bougainville Copper Limited and its employees left behind. Though in a place where the infrastructure's gone to pot, things constantly require improvised repairs.
That's my car over there. It's not actually mine, but when I fought, everything just got into hands. The PNGDF, they came, they shot at me, and just some of the bullet holes. I don't know how it happened, but I was in the hands of the Lord, so I was saved.
Along with his truck, his generator, his exercise gym, Ishmael brings anything else he can carry back from successful operations. On a blockaded island, it's the only way to go shopping.
Well, that's how. He likes playing with the ball. I took the ball from one operations in Boca. That's part of the victory. I had to go and give it to my kids. Well, that's where we play. That's the music shop, the music station. We teach ourselves how to play. Oh, this is the place. It's really not good, but we like it being here. I like being here. It just reminds me of the simple life. My hand is not really good, but this is the rhythm, and the lead is over there, and that's the keyboards over there. Jesus, we praise your name, 'cause you are the soon coming King.
The scavenger's mecca on Bougainville is the Panguna mine itself and the town built to house its workers. After devastating it to make sure the miners never returned, Francis and his fellow villagers ended up having to go back to salvage anything not rooted in concrete. Because along with getting the Bougainvillians to start from scratch with food and medicine, the PNGDF also burnt down many of their houses and gave them that problem to solve.
We have to make our own logs. So what we do is we go down to Panguna and get all the logs and strip them out and make our own keys using all the rubbish from the Panguna mine. We can build good houses. As you can see, bits and pieces of lighting up houses. Switch boxes.
I know these people can make something out of nothing, but I still can't work out how they can light whole villages. William laughs and takes us to his local workshop.
As you see, all the parts and all the machines, like a water pump, it's a barbed wire. We've got something to do with it, because some people, they might throw it away. We don't. We collect parts. We can make things out of it.
The islanders have dragged the mine's debris, sometimes for weeks across the mountains, to create this sort of setup. And it's in places like this that they've cobbled together their own ecological power supply, hydroelectricity.
Okay, these are the intakes pipes for the hydro, and from there it goes right down to the generator itself. After Papua New Guinea government has blockaded us, and then we couldn't have any petrol or diesel. We have to develop something to get power supply, and we got this mini hydro using all the rubbish or the pipes and spare parts from all cars. We managed to develop our own hydro, which we can use for lighting up all the villages. We got about 50 to 60 now running this type of small hydros. Down there where the PNCDF establishment, there is virtually not much lighting up, no electricity. Maybe it's sort of money or something for, to run those generators. But here in the bush, we can have, I throw coin for 24 hours a day. I think with the blockade still on, that would be very nice. Because then we'll be learning more and more and advance into near future so that new things will come, new ideas grow.
New ideas have been growing wherever I look, but the high point of this eco-revolution has to be the way they're still driving around without any proper fuel supply after 7 years of blockade. The secret, as I should have guessed, is growing all around me. Francis once stated that the war against Papua New Guinea could be won in a week. The war against Australia, that'd take a little bit longer. And by 1996, the Bougainville Revolutionary Army was winning. PNG's last big offensive turned into its biggest rout. And when we get to the island, the BRA hold about 80% of the territory.
You can see that that's the Toyo Valley. Further down where you can see the last mountain, that's where at last the PNCDF camp is. That's Bolabe. And that's where they end. They don't come any further.
The PNGDF don't come any further, not just because they're beaten, but also because they hardly care anymore. In the war for hearts and minds, the BRA were always winning. And when no other country came to Bougainville's aid, the people found support in a different realm. Because the colonial legacy they most embraced was that of the missionaries.
I think without Jesus, I wouldn't have come this far. Just because without that superpowers, the Australian government or whoever who has been helping the Papua New Guinea government might have beaten me a long time ago. What were true? O kan maybe you come from a place. What were true? You play on crossfire no kan girauna or something. Jumping go tedi temptation na take arm go ruara di mang. Blongonen. You play on fail long committing me one time Jesus. You now by funda no kan temptation.
Okay, by me thanking Papa God on the sala operation where me plaving walk about lohen. Where no got one man even sim biru alongen, you know got one man you lose him live longen.
My uncle, he's his teams. He normally comes with us, and where we are in the enemy territory, he can feel, he can see. He's his vision from God that the enemies are going to attack, or if they're in the ambush, we can change our plans and operation to the same minute when there's a vision from God.
Father, me pray, now thank you. Oh, get something where me been walking, you are big name long and thank you, Lord Father. Me play no losing one for life, long one for brother, me play on this operation. Oh, say now me thank you, Papa God. You are big name, you are blessing me, one. Now I'm can try best for me can long go on another operation. Amen.
Okay. Go to house. Clean him all gun. Next use.
Once we've broken enough bread and sweat together, Ishmael trusts us enough to reveal the secret charms he uses in combat.
We use it for poisoning the gun. And we usually put it on the tip of the gun so that when we shoot an enemy, automatically when the bullet goes inside, there are snakes, small snakes that usually come out of a man's body. So it's just like we are poisoning them. But God's power is unlimited. It's just like when you charge a battery into put into a charging device, then it charges more power. Then that is what I've learned, and I give up hope in using this.
Now that Ishmael sees our camera batteries in a more positive way, he lets us in further.
I'm not proud to be a fighter. I'm proud because my name's written in the book of life. Yeah, and I'm saved, and that is what I'm proud of. It's just like a miracle that God helped me while I was injured here. When I laid down, the Lord spoke to me and said, "You're only half an inch away from death." So I said, "Yes, I'll choose you, and I'm going to follow you." That's why I really want to be some kind of a man who's preaching the gospel. It's just a miracle that God has saved Bougainville.
The islanders' devotion seemed to pay off in early 1997 when God moved in one of his most mysterious ways. Papua New Guinea basically admitted defeat by hiring mercenaries to do what the PNGDF couldn't. It forked out $36 million to the London-based company Sandline International and presented the BRA with the biggest armed threat it had ever faced. And then, lo and behold, the PNGDF itself came to Bougainville's aid. Humiliated by the very idea of needing foreign troops, and even more angry at the price, the underfunded PNG soldiers rallied huge popular support, arrested the mercenaries, and threw them out.
Suppose only when come na only use him all rocket number, atin ba only na win. That's all. This la equipment only got. A man and me walk him. This la God lo Bougainville em sa toki mi pla also. So mi pla even believe by mi pla win him all modern weapons long all. Because all the time, by no got way or some. Suppose you go, you pass the brick wall by stop, and me must got way out.
Finding a way out is something the Bougainvillians tend to do with startling regularity. And none amazes me more than the way they fuel the transport so crucial to fighting a war. With hundreds of abandoned mine vehicles littering the island, how were the BRA going to run them without diesel? Finally, William shows us.
This is the complete thing of scraping the coconut, from scraping to squeeze to ferment, and then the last thing to cook the oil, the 1 liter oil, maybe about 15 dry coconut for a liter. That's the first grade this way. It's beautiful.
Not only is coconut oil far less polluting than diesel, you also get double the mileage. Ishmael laughs that after the war, they're really going to scare Esso and Shell.
Coconut by kamap lo nervous states lo island lumipa. Suppose coconut inogat, sambla hap lo revolution minating by me play na kamap lo these states.
And everyone here is convinced that what they've achieved despite having everything against them proves beyond doubt that they can run their own state, especially with all the ecological innovations they're sworn to developing further when they become independent.
With the close of the mine, we have been blessed. We have been blessed. We've been blessed to see, abundance of food. We've been blessed with, breathing fresh air. If we win this, certainly it's going to become quite an important precedent.
In fact, Bougainville has already become a precedent, inspiring many other Pacific communities having holes dug in their backyards. Across the region, resistance to and compensation from ecological devastation has upped considerably. And when, thanks to the mercenary debacle, the news broke of this obscure bunch of islanders beating Papua New Guinea and Australia and Rio Tinto Zinc, suddenly the international community got interested in beginning peace talks in mid-1997.
What? What? Go!
Francis, who has fears of winning the war but losing the peace, steers clear of the compromises involved in the proposed deal. He is labelled a hardliner for this, but maybe that's because he's not the kind of leader we're used to and knows how easily Bougainville could lose its way in the jungle of international politics.
During my high school days, I was appointed to sweep the principal's house, but on one occasion, I found him, was doing my job, was cleaning up the toilet. And I asked him, why could you, the principal, could do such a thing? And what he told me was that the leaders must come down and clean the dirt for his people. And that taught me a very, very big lesson, which I'm looking forward to teach other leaders in all parts of the world, that the leader must clean the boots for his people.
The peace process, though, is creating a rift between Francis and one of the prime movers behind it, his Vice President Joseph Kabui.
This is it. We will either make it or break it. And because it is now, as I see it, is now a game of survival, of political survival. And there is a clear-cut political tension right now. Change is imminent from the way things are now looking.
What do you mean by change, then?
Change of political leadership, that is. Our president will be changed. Could be changed sometime soon.
And who would be the new president?
Well, it's up to people to decide, and up to BRA to decide. So we will wait and see how things will go about.
But it will probably be you, will it?
Well, if it comes to me, I'm ready and willing.
Joseph also has Ishmael's support. But despite their different methods, they and Francis definitely have the same end in mind: independence with a capital I.
Without independence, we are looking at more bloodshed. We are looking at more destruction of Bougainville through the means of, the Papua New Guinea government and Australian government, because they got a mining interest. They'll bring back all the multinational companies that destruct all the land, and it's that freedom, it's that peace.
It's la mine not up, because by giving problem lo all future generation lo mipla lo Bougainville. Na mipla like this la by come up. No go to lime lo mipla lo behind time all by looking na all by talk also. All forefathers lo mipla all no bin making mipla by mipla sin down also. All in bagarapi mipla trauma mipla, that's why mipla end up also.
Men on this earth, on planet Earth, depend on land, depend on environment. And I wish to ask everyone, every leader of any nation, to take care and take care of the land so that people on this planet Earth can be saved.
The future, rather than tales of past woes, is what all the Bougainvillians I've met focus upon. Despite the destruction of their land, 8 years of isolation, untold atrocities, and up to 15,000 deaths, the impression I take home is of a people who don't seem to know the meaning of self-pity, let alone pessimism. Before we leave to run the blockade on our way out, Francis sends us off with one of the songs he writes for his regular communal sing-sings. Since we left Bougainville, the peace talks have led to a permanent ceasefire. The blockade has been lifted and reconciliation and restoration are taking place. Yet Papua New Guinea is still dodging the central demand of the BRA, a referendum on independence. Things aren't over yet. But whatever happens, when it comes to self-help and ecology, the Bougainvilleans have already given the world many lessons it can learn, if it ever chooses to.
So I used to thank Papua New Guinea government for imposing a blockade, because if blockade wasn't imposed on Bougainville, we wouldn't develop this part. Nobody has been trained, but so natural talent that we are developing. I think with the blockade, the Bougainville War is like an educational center, or furthermore, I could say it's a university for all of us who are on Bougainville.